What's up, guys? So we've got a question from Peter, who is a powerlifter who got into jiu-jitsu about 3 months ago. He says that since getting into jiu-jitsu, the numbers on his lifts, right, have come down a bit. Like the amount of weight that he can lift has come down a bit. And he's wondering, is there a way to balance the two so he can keep them both going up, or should he readjust his expectations on everything? And so, Peter, thanks for the question, brother. And you may know that I was into powerlifting and stuff back in the day, right? Like when I was in my early 20s, I was lifting as heavy as humanly possible for me. Both my strength went up and my weight went up. I got up to about 255 pounds at one point, and my numbers, like squat and deadlift, were both above 2 times my body weight. And my bench press was somewhere in like the mid threes. And again, I would do powerlifting during the weekdays, and sometimes on the weekends I would do strongman type exercises. And I had a blast doing it. And I enjoyed being big and strong. And again, this is about 45 pounds heavier than what I am now. The problem was that as I got bigger and stronger, right, as my weight came up, my jiu-jitsu came down. And so I ended up being kind of mediocre at both, because at 250, those weights really aren't that I was putting up. They're really not that good if you want to compare me to like some sort of competitive lifter. And then at the time, my jiu-jitsu was coming down because I'm bigger, carrying a lot more bulk around, so I don't have the movement that I was used to. And at the same time, I was always beat up because like I'm lifting heavy ass weight all the time, and then coming in trying to train, I'm never able to perform at my best. And I also started to run into a lot of little injuries here and there because I was trying to go hard in both places. And so I was trying to go hard in the weight room, hard in the gym, and I'm going two opposite directions because I never really focused on either one with the intention of making them sort of come together in the middle somewhere. So I eventually had to think about it, like what is it that I really want to do? And my focus obviously is on jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts at this time, but really jiu-jitsu. And so I had to let the weight come down a little bit, both my weight on my body and also the weights that I was throwing up in the gym. Again, I let them come down so that I could focus more on training, and I started to lift in a way that was going to be more productive for my jiu-jitsu training. Now when I lift for a couple reasons. One, because I like to look good with my clothes off, right? Again, I want my girlfriend to look at me and be like, man, he looks good, right? So I lift for that reason as well. But I also lift to make sure that I support my body as a whole so that I can train longer. Because again, the biggest contributor, like people say, look, what's the best training routine or lifting routine for jiu-jitsu? It's the one that keeps you on the mat longer, right? Because we have all kinds of imbalances and things like that. So we want to make sure that we're lifting to make our whole body strong. And then we want to pay careful attention to certain areas of our body, especially if we do jiu-jitsu, that are typically going to be problem areas, right? Because again, if you look at certain jiu-jitsu guys that have been training for a long time who don't do any corrective exercising or any weight training, like you'll see this thing where if they're walking around, they're almost always slightly bent at their hips. You can't see me right now, but they're like their hips are slightly bent and their back is rounded. And it's because, again, we're in that position all the time in jiu-jitsu, and if you don't do anything to counteract it, it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And by the end of it, you're going to be like walking around like a hunchback. And so you got to correct that stuff. And so my weight training now is to support my jiu-jitsu. Now, there's a problem the problem that I had is that when my numbers had gotten built up, I was very attached to those suckers. And when they started to come down, there was definitely like a shot in the heart, right? Like I'd get under the bench or I'd get under the squat rack, and I was like, God darn, this weight's getting heavier and heavier as I'm losing some body weight and as I'm like training more in jiu-jitsu. But you have to be okay with that. And so going back to your original question, you said, do you need to readjust or can you balance the two? You definitely need to readjust your expectations. First thing you need to do is you need to say, okay, like what is it that I want, right? Because if you try to go hard in both, you're going to be mediocre in both, or you're going to keep going up, and then eventually you're going to get a bad injury of some sort because your body can only take so much damage. So you need to figure out what is it that you want. Do you want to be a really good powerlifter? Do you want to go all into powerlifting and then just like dabble over in jiu-jitsu? Or do you want to go all in to jiu-jitsu and then just dabble in weight training a little bit, right? Is that what you want to do? You got to figure that out. And then once you figure that out, you got to commit to it. And that's the hardest part because, again, if you commit to jiu-jitsu because you want to be like, you want to really go after it, okay, cool. Make sure that you do not chase the competitor, or make sure you do not chase the weights in the room. So if you're going into jiu-jitsu, don't go into the weight room and start climbing weights with the competitive like lifters there. If you decide to go all into weight training, don't go to the jiu-jitsu gym and then try to like chase the competitors there because they're on a different path than you. And that's hard sometimes because, you know, just a lot of times as guys, we get competitive everywhere and we want it all, but you can't have it all. So you got to focus on one. And so also, guys, I wanted to end this video with, because I think that answers the question for Peter. I also wanted to end this with, I started making some weight training videos about 2 years ago, and I stopped, and it was because weight training is kind of my meditation. So one of those places where I can kind of get away and be quiet. It's like this sometimes, like the gym's quiet, and this is my time to kind of like lift and focus in a little bit. And I didn't want to always have to be like mindful of the camera, but I am going to start to put out some videos from time to time for you guys because I have some help with the videos, and so I'll be able to have someone watch me or like record for me so that this way I can show the exercises for you guys. And a lot of these exercises, it's not going to be the fun, sexy stuff that's going to like, you know, that you might want, but it's going to be the stuff that'll probably help you out as far as being able to train longer, because it's the stuff that like just from trial and error and getting my own problems and getting messed up plenty myself, it's stuff I figured out that's like, oh, this is so helpful for my jiu-jitsu, this is so helpful for me staying in a healthy state with my body. I would love to share this with people, and so I plan to do that here in the future. But Peter, I hope that helps you as far as your question goes. You got to readjust your expectations. You need to focus in on what you want the most, and then go all in on there, right? And then dabble on the other. So, brother, thank you for the question. Guys, I'll talk to you next time.